We are continuing our season reviews today. We're talking about a couple of guys who got their first games as Blue Jackets this season and whether they could be part of this team in the future.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster. Got my co-host, Hayden Househunt here. We are here to bring you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and ours, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I just want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms, over on YouTube and also on the SiriusXM app. I also have to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, at the top of the show, we're going to talk about a couple of guys that have mostly been AHL players, but got to make, in one case, his NHL debut, and in another case, his Blue Jackets debut. He'd played all of one game before that. And then I think to finish off, we'll talk a little bit about the Worlds, because just before I hit record, I saw a tweet about that. So I feel like we should probably talk about the fact that the Blue Jackets injury curse continues even internationally. But let's start off, Hayden, with Justin Richards, who is, of course, the son of Todd Richards, who was the Blue Jackets head coach for some time. Former AAA Blue Jacket, went to the NCAA, went to the New York Rangers, played one game there before coming to Columbus this season, had 39 points in 61 AHL games, makes his Blue Jackets debut, plays 2 games for the organization this season, gets an assist. Honestly, for a guy that I had literally only heard of this season, and for a guy who I believe was a college free agent, like an undrafted free agent signing, 31 points in 39 points in 61 games is not too shabby, I don't think.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, he is a guy who spent some time as a child or as a teenager, whatever you want to call it, here in Columbus when his dad was the head coach, Todd Richards, for 5 years. Justin was playing AAA Blue Jackets. So he's been in Columbus, spent a lot of time here at the Chiller Ice Rink, so very familiar with that. I think he might have gotten drafted maybe by the Blue Jackets, but then quickly released shortly after that, maybe a year after that, was picked up by the Rangers, and then now he's been picked up by the Blue Jackets. So he's been bounced around quite a bit. Not too many locations, obviously, since a bulk of it really has been the Blue Jackets. He was developed in Columbus, and now he's playing in Cleveland this past year. Had his best AHL season ever last year. I think he had 39 points in 60 some odd games. It's second in points on the team behind Fix Wolanski. So he's producing. He's just 25. He's, as you said, got a couple games of NHL experience under his belt. I think it's literally 3 games of NHL experience under his belt, so not a whole lot there. But if you look up and down wherever he's been, Jay, he's been nothing but productive. Even going back to his NCAA hockey days, playing for Minnesota Duluth, was a part of a back-to-back national championship winning team. For anybody that follows NCAA hockey, you know that is impressive. Winning back-to-back national titles is very impressive, and he was a part of that at Minnesota Duluth. Had a hell of a year last year with the Monsters. I see a lot of upside with this guy. He seems like he can do a lot. Seems like he can win faceoffs. He can carry the puck into the zone. A whole lot of plays where he is getting goals because he's getting A2s on just carrying the puck into the zone. That's huge. He had a great year this past year in Cleveland, Jay, and I think he's definitely a guy for Blue Jackets fans to keep on their radar a little bit, because I think there was a point in this year where he would have gotten a lot more time, but he was injured. So he would have been up with the Blue Jackets earlier, back when they were having their issues with Cole Sillinger. They wanted to send him down to Cleveland and bring Richards up, but Richards was hurt. So he missed out on an opportunity there, but he's definitely a guy that's going to have some opportunity in the future. So keep an eye on him.
Yeah, he feels like a guy that if he has a big training camp, like he could slot into. I don't think he's ever going to be a star for Columbus. I don't think that's realistic. I think his ceiling is probably third line center. But if you can get a third line center out of an undrafted guy that like to date has played 3 NHL games, I feel pretty okay about that. And he's got two points in those 3 games. So, he's doing okay. Hasn't scored yet. I would look for him to, add a little bit of scoring. But he is, it seems like mostly a playmaker, had 10 goals, 29 assists this season with the Monsters, had 6 goals and 8 assists last season with Hartford. But it feels like he's kind of the thing about Richards is I feel like he's kind of had the opposite thing that I've been talking about with a lot of these season reviews, which is a lot of guys played up in the lineup because of injuries and whatnot. Justin Richards took the opportunity to play up in the lineup in Cleveland and was rewarded for it. He didn't seem out of his depth when the Blue Jackets took basically the entire top line. When they didn't have, they didn't have Fix Wolanski, they didn't have Foodie, they didn't have Bemstrom, they didn't have just a ton of guys. I'm forgetting names. I had a list in my head and they've all gone. But Justin Richards got moved up to that top line. And I think he basically took his opportunity and ran with it. And, you can see that by the fact that his previous AHL high was 14 points. And he more than doubled that in 6 less games. So do I think he's going to be a star? No. Do I think he's going to be a regular for the Blue Jackets? No, not necessarily. But to me, he feels like a guy that you keep in the AHL. And as soon as you get an injury to center, that you think, right, we need someone that's got experience, someone that can kind of hold their own at the NHL level. You call Richards up, you stick him in 2-3 games, send him back down. He feels like a guy that probably will be one of those tweeters for most, if not all, of his career. But I don't know. He's a rare guy, I think, that is going to be good at the AHL level and serviceable at the NHL level. I feel like you don't get a ton of guys that are real tweeters. You either have guys that are too good for the AHL or not good enough for the NHL, and so they tear up the AHL when they're there, but they struggle in the NHL. And Justin Richards kind of seems like he's dropped right into that sweet spot between those two things, which is it's a useful kind of player to have.
Yeah, for now he's dropped into that spot, which to any player is a successful career. He's very good at hockey. He's played an NHL game, so that's obvious that he's had a successful hockey career. But just because that's where he's at right now, I don't want to necessarily say he can't go further. It just doesn't seem like he's had the right amount of shakes at the NHL level for me to determine what he could be for the Blue Jackets. Because the biggest thing I think when determining whether a player is ready for the NHL is not whether they can go out on the ice and have some flashy plays. I feel like anybody can do that. It's whether they can do it on a night in, night out basis. And I just think looking at his resume of hockey, a guy that's been grinding in the AHL now, had a consistent season in the AHL this past year, a guy who has real good high-level NCAA hockey experience, being part of 2 national championship teams. And he's a son of Todd Richards, who was an NHL player and former NHL coach for this club for 5 years. So it seems like he's in deep in the sport of hockey and with the Blue Jackets. And I think he deserves a lot more looks this upcoming season. He was with the CBJ developmental camp 4 years ago. I think that was his first development camp, was 4 years ago. So he's been through the off seasons, man. He's one of those guys that's like an NHL vet, but not really, because he hasn't played. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's 25.
Yeah, you look at him and you're like, oh, surely he's had, like 80 to 100 games of experience. Then you look and there's actually like 3 games.
Right.
I wonder if you get, and we talk about him like he's 20, he's 25. That's not old. It's starting to get to like prime for NHL players, but like Michael Bunting was 26 when he was nominated for the Calder. That was his rookie season.
Yeah.
I don't know that we'll get a Michael Bunting season out of Justin Richards.
Well,
but
to be also fair, the Blue Jackets are never going to get that much media attention on their rookies as the Maple
true.
Leafs got with Bunting. Like, Bunting had a good year and everybody was seeing it because the Leafs play on every, they play in front of everybody.
Let's talk about another local kid, a guy that has been in the organization since 2020, former Blue Jackets draft pick. We're going to talk about Tyler Angle in just a minute, who is one of my favorite success stories of this organization. But first, I've got to tell you all about Gametime because I don't know about you, but I hate planning. No, that's not right. I love planning in theory. I'm terrible at it. And so sometimes I get to a day and I'm like, oh, we have plans to do this. We need tickets for that. And trying to find tickets last minute is so frustrating. Not with Gametime. Gametime has a super easy to use app. They've got flash deals, last minute tickets. You can get images of seat view, so you know whether you're getting a restricted view, whether you're going to be able to see. They've got low price guarantees, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, all these kinds of things. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. So snag the tickets without the stress. Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Jay Foster. I've got Hayden Householm with me, and we're talking about Tyler Angle now, who, like I said just before we went into break, one of my underrated faves of the Cleveland Monsters, former 7th round draft pick. Do you know how rare it is for a 7th round draft pick to even get an NHL game? He was drafted in 2019, played 4 seasons with the Windsor Spitfires in the OHL, had really great numbers there, had 67 points in 62 games for his last OHL season. Came to the AHL as a rookie, was a point per game on if I remember rightly, a pretty bad Monsters team. They were, again, much like the Blue Jackets, struggling and injured and inconsistent all over the place. Tyler Angle turns up, is 21, maybe 20 years old, 21 years old, and is a point per game in the AHL. Made his NHL debut this season, which, again, so rare for a 7th round pick to even make the NHL, like for their debut, let alone score in, I believe he scored in his NHL debut as well, which
it was against the Sabres. It was against the Sabres. It was not in the huge loss where there was a million goals. It was in the 5-2 loss at the end of April there. So buried somewhere in the mix of tanking. Yeah, he had a nice goal where he kind of dog walked Rasmus Dahlin a little bit. So it was a light dog walk. I'll say that. It wasn't a full dog walk. Yeah, light dog walk.
The thing about Tyler Angle is, having watched a bunch of Monsters hockey over the past kind of couple of seasons, is he doesn't look like a player that was drafted 7th overall. Sometimes he does, but every so often you see these flashes of a player that could be an NHL guy. And again, he's only 22. He's 5'10", 170 pounds, so that probably explains why he dropped all the way to 7th. But I don't know, man. I think has a lot of potential. I think he maybe has more potential than Justin Richards. If I can have a hot take, maybe that's my bias showing because I've been following Tyler since his rookie season. But he did not look out of place at all in these, admittedly, very small sample size of these 2 NHL games. I would be very surprised if Tyler Angle did not get a long look at the NHL roster during preseason, depending on what the coach thinks. Obviously, we don't know who the coach is going to be yet, but I think Tyler Angle is going to make a push this offseason to get that NHL spot and kind of defy the odds.
It's very simple. The reason why you like Tyler Angle more than Justin Richards, or why you think he has a higher upside. And it's because Justin Richards, son of a great hockey mind, he's going to play technical hockey, and that's what Justin Richards does. He plays very good technical hockey, makes all the smart plays, hustles hard along the boards. what Tyler Angle has, and he'd be drafted higher if he would have been bigger size. He's 5'11" or 5'10", I think even.
I think
Those,
he's 5'10".
yeah,
So,
those guys
for
get no
people
looks.
listening to the audio, I did just do air quotes because I feel like no hockey player is actually 5'10". They are 5'8" and lying about it.
Right. Yeah, no. So he doesn't get a lot of looks because of that. So that's very not fair because just because of this, you can't write a guy off just because of the size, but a lot of times before they reach, you know, the a television screen, a lot of people just write him off because of their size. And he's one of those guys that got written off. You're right. He's a 7th round draft pick. Not a lot of those guys make the NHL. He's played in an NHL game. The reason why he has so much upside is because he plays just brave, right? Like he is willing to try those Michigans, the between the legs goals, and he's good at them. He can hit those in games. But just the only reason we know that is because he's willing to try it. And that is a huge part of the modern NHL. And trying to identify talent is players willing to try creative ways to get a pass off or to score a goal. Tyler Angle has that. He has that mindset. And if you just also want to pay attention to the guy's mindset, look up that final year he played in the OHL for the Spitfires. The dude was unbelievable. And he sellied every goal with passion. You know what I mean? And that strikes me as a guy who all he wants to do is score. Like that's all he thinks about. That's all he is constantly thinking about is I just want to get a goal. He goes to bed at night thinking, man, I can't wait to score a goal tomorrow. And then he scores and he has these sellies in front of crowds of, a couple thousand. But it's like, man, this guy clearly has a fire underneath him and he's brave. And that's the biggest thing that I like. And that's how he opens himself up to being able to try all those flashy moves is because he just thinks he can do it. And he plays with a lot of confidence. And he's another guy that I hope to see a lot more in the future because of that. Because I think that flashness goes well for this new Blue Jackets team we're going for. Johnson, Gaudreau, Laine. We want flash out the buns.
Yeah, it's going to be such an interesting offseason and preseason, I think, because like we've talked about it a lot. Brand new coach. They have a lot of NHL ready guys that are going to be competing. I would say I haven't crunched the numbers on this, but if you take away the guys that are kind of NHL locks, there's maybe 6 or 7 guys that are going to be competing for maybe 4 spots on the forward line. It's going to be tough competition. And I think Tyler Angle has the right attitude to push through and decide. I think you see that a lot with, undersized guys, with guys that are, late round draft picks. Again, we're going to bring up Matt Calvert. We love Matt Calvert on this podcast. Short guy, late round draft pick, decided that he was making the NHL through sheer force of will and made a pretty decent NHL career of it. I could see Tyler Angle doing the same thing. I don't think he has the bite that Calvert does, but he is. I would not be surprised if he is on the 4th line next season. I think I would be okay with that.
I have a little concern, and that was the drop off in points and the plus minus this past year with Cleveland. And what I mean by that is he's just completed his 3rd year with the Monsters. He had 23 points in 66 games. The year prior, he had 37 points in 71 games. So his production dropped off a bit. I got to say, I would like to know why that is. So if any Monsters fans are out there, maybe you noticed something. Maybe it could just be he just maybe the puck didn't bounce as much as it should have or something, or maybe he wasn't getting as much playing time. But that is one thing that concerns me, I guess, is the drop off in points. And I don't think that's fair because I did not tune into as many Monsters games as maybe some others. I would just like to know why. But other than that, the flash is there. If he said he doesn't have that kind of bite that Calvert has, if he can develop that, if he can add that, then that is dangerous. I mean, talk about guys that float between the AHL and NHL. Nathan Gerby's a guy a long time for a couple seasons was floating back and forth, made a lot of money because of it. So if you can develop that part of your game and you want to be, you know, that kind of a player that is going to, you know, be the sandpaper kind of guy, do the sandpaper.
There's always going to be room on an NHL team for a guy who is a pain in the butt, you know?
Yes.
So if Tyler Angle can fill that gap in the Blue Jackets roster, then who knows? We forgot to give Justin Richards a grade. So let's go ahead and give Justin and Tyler some letters. I am going to give both of them Bs. I think I'm going to give Tyler a B and I'm going to give Justin a B minus, just because Tyler Angle scored in his NHL debut. And I feel like that deserves at least a B, if nothing else. So I'm going to give him the edge on that just because he wound up with the goal. Richards has 2 assists in 3 career NHL games, 1 assist with 2 Blue Jackets games. So still, I'm going to say, as a 25-year-old coming into this league, being a 0.66 points per game player, I'm okay with that.
Okay, I'll flip it on you a little bit. I'll go an A minus for Justin Richards just because he had his best season that he's had point-wise. I saw college Justin Richards out of Justin Richards this year with the Monsters, which is a good thing because, like I said, they won back-to-back national championships when he was in college, given that production. So keep that up, buddy. Keep that going. A minus. If you do it again, I'll probably give a B plus though, because I always expect my players to do more. My players, as a part of the team.
The players that we own. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
When
you've been a fan for 2 decades, you're allowed to call them my players. When your fandom's is older than the players. So I got that. I got an A minus for him. I'll do B plus for Tyler Angle. I don't like drop off. I don't like the minus 13. I've only seen highlights of him on offense, and I really, really like what I see. But maybe commit more to the defensive side to increase that, to help that point differential out. He did score in an NHL game. He gently dog walked Rasmus Dahlin, which I love to see. So that moves him from a B to a B plus. But I got A minus for Richards, tons of upside as far as the technicality goes with him, and I got a B plus for Angle, tons of upside in terms of the raw hockey talent. So,
yeah. In a minute, we are gonna go ahead and just check in on how the World Championships are going for the Blue Jackets. Spoilers, not great, because everyone is injured, as is tradition at this point. So that's what we're going to do in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so before the World Championships even started, I believe they named Patrick Laine, and he then pulled out because he wasn't 100% after, was it a knee injury, I think, that he finished the season with? David Jiricek was also named, I think, and then got pulled because of an injury. So even before the tournament started, 2 of the 5 players that were named, 2 of the 5 Blue Jackets players that were named to rosters for the World Championships are injured and done. They haven't even left yet. You know, the plane hasn't even left. Now, Ole, I always get his name wrong. Let me pull up the tweet because I don't want to.
I'll just say while you look that up, obviously, any Blue Jackets fan that's watching this knows Laine is a big part of next year's team, obviously. Jiricek also supposed to be a big part of next year's team. He had a great year with the Monsters this past year. So for some reason, if you're a Blue Jackets fan, I doubt many of you don't know his name, but for some reason you don't know David Jiricek, we're going to need him next year. Mm-hmm. I'm glad that both these guys are hurt in this fashion. I'd rather them just decide, hey, I'm too banged up, I'm not going to play in this thing. I'd rather that than them play 1 to 2 games and then get hurt even more. So I guess this is somewhat positive injury news, right? Like,
I'd rather they be injured and sit it out than go with like a niggle or a tweak and then make that worse. Because then you see is Ole Julian Bjorkvik-Holm, who I always get name mixed up, but I have double checked, did not play. He left a game earlier this week, hasn't returned yet. And then Alexander Texier who we were all so psyched about, left the game early yesterday and will not dress today. So I believe the only healthy Blue Jacket at the World Championships at the minute is Samuel Konazko, who, we should probably just all collectively pray for Samuel Konazko, because he's the only healthy one left. I worry about the fact that this curse is getting worse. And I've been joking about this basically since, I think, was it the 2014-2015 season, where they had like 500 man games lost and every single person was broken and it was all horrible. They beat that record this year. I think they finished with like almost 550 man games lost, which is it's too many, guys. I would like the injuries to stop, and I don't.
Are you calling them soft? Are you calling the Blue Jackets soft?
That's exactly what I'm doing, Hayden. I am calling the Blue Jackets soft. No, I am calling the Blue Jackets cursed. Someone's gonna clip that, and I'm gonna get ratioed.
I was gonna say it's fair to call them soft. Like, I feel like, which this past year, if there was any year it's okay to be soft, it's okay to have been soft this past year. The man games lost.
I look at the injuries, and it's like broken bones and concussions.
True.
And, like, shoulder injuries and muscle tears and
True.
stuff. And it's
but
not things that are like
true, but
things that happen as a result of like collisions and things like that, as opposed to like, I feel like I always think there was a worry about the goaltending on this team, because I felt like there was a couple of years there where Sergei Bobrovsky basically every 6 weeks would re-injure his groin. And it was all these like soft tissue injuries that kind of made me worry about the training standard of this team. I don't think that's the case this year. I think they were just really, really unlucky this year. They saw a lot of bad luck, a lot of concussions, a lot of I think 4 torn labrums / separated shoulders in a season. Like, that's not soft. I don't think. That is just horrific luck.
Okay.
You can't tough your way out of. You can't unseparate your shoulder by being tough,
I agree with that. But a lot of those games lost were due, and I can prove this for you, but just looking up the tweets, the amount of times it was like 3 hours before a Blue Jackets game, and I saw Patrick Laine out due to illness, or Johnny Gaudreau out due to illness. Well, he didn't have very many of those games at all, but he
missed 2 games total.
He left 1 game because of illness, but like the amount of Elvis Merzlikins is going to be missing due to illness, or like that was just the amount of due to illnesses that I had to read this year. Like, I don't want to read that anymore. Okay. Get some freaking hand sanitizer on the PJ, or start passing out masks again. I don't want to read one more due to illness. Okay. That is soft. They're right. The broken bones, the torn muscles, that is unlucky. I will agree. And the occasional sickness is also, I'll give a pass for that, but you better be like Panarin was in 2019, and you better be, I'm not even going to quote. We all remember the Torts quote.
You remember that quote.
Yes.
I remember it well. I think the thing for me is I would rather, if they're sick, stay home, because otherwise what happens is they come to the rink, they pass it around, and then you've got 7 or 8 guys that are, in the locker room, and they've all got the poops because one guy came to work sick,
Yeah.
We saw it with, what team was it? There was one team this season. I can't remember who it was. I want to say Vancouver, but that might be wrong. And they were like, yeah.
Was it the Wild?
Every single guy has the stomach flu right now.
I think it was the Wild. Yeah, it was the Wild right in their...
The University of Michigan team ended up dressing their 3rd string goalie as a forward because there was a bug going around the team that was bad enough that like they had like 6 players in hospital getting fluids, So it's, I don't know, illness is a weird one. And
it is a weird one.
Like, toughen up and just go to work. We've all worked sick, but also
it's true.
The way that these guys exist is that they live directly, like they're attached at the hip. And so if one of them gets sick, they're all getting sick. It's like preschool. You send your kid to preschool sick, everyone's going home sick. So on the one hand, I would love to see less illnesses. I wonder how much of that is the fact that a lot of them are first-time dads at the minute, and kids are germ factories. But I would love to see a healthier Blue Jackets core this season, whether that be illness, injury, whatever. Like, I would like to see more than one guy or more than two guys play over 80 games next season. That's my hope. So we'll see how it goes. Maybe we should stop sending people to world championships first of all, because that seems to be a problem.
One last thought that I will leave Blue Jackets fans: if you need to make up, if you are feeling down and out about the injury news at the IIHF World Championships, just let me just pretend like this is real, what I'm about to say. There was an email sent out to all the Blue Jackets players saying, hey, $500 for every game you don't play that isn't in a Blue Jackets uniform this year. There you go. And then that's where all the Blue Jackets got that email before the tournament started, and they all told their coaches, play, coach, sorry. So that's what happened.
Yeah, sorry, I can't play.
Yeah,
okay, I got $500 on this.
It might have to be more than $500 with how much they're making.
Probably, yeah. If we start at 5,000 and then go up from there.
Also, did you see Kent Johnson and Bedard playing on a roller hockey team out in
No, I didn't. But
British Columbia, where they're from.
I'm still so bummed that we couldn't get those two guys back together. Like that would have been real fun.
But you can watch them play in roller hockey on YouTube. Yeah. So there you go.
There you go.
You
Think
can
about
dream.
what we could have had.
Yeah.
That's all we've got for today. Tomorrow we are going to be doing a quick catch up on the coaching news. There's been a couple of stories come out, people getting interviewed, people not getting interviewed, and honestly, by the time we record tomorrow, they might have made a coaching decision because I believe they want it done this week. So we'll see how it goes. But that's currently the plan for tomorrow, is to talk about the coaching. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find Hayden over at HaydenH971. Thank you for listening. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked on Blue Jackets continues to be free and available on all podcast platforms. We're over on YouTube. We're on Sirius XM. You can find us on Twitter at LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email us at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. We will be back tomorrow, hopefully with good news, maybe with bad news. Who's to say? But until then, make sure you stay locked on.